The Moza Air has been called the Zhiyun Crane and Ronin M killer. In this video, I'm going to review the Moza Air while comparing it against the Zhiyun Crane, which I have been using for half a year.
You caused me trouble.
So, the Moza Air is a new 3-axis gimbal that has been getting a lot of attention. I have been selling and using the Zhiyun Crane for around half a year now. Before we go further, we must remember that I actually shoot with the A6300 and A6500, meaning that my setup is usually pretty light. I could actually use the Crane M for most of my lenses. However, once in a while I like to shoot something a bit heavier. And for that, you need either the full-size crane or something even bigger than Moza Air. That being said, my heaviest setup is still 1.5 kilos, and Moza Air supposedly goes to 2.5, so I cannot really push it to the limit. After 1 week of using the Moza Air, I've been generally quite happy, but when I compare it to the Zhiyun Crane, I notice some problems. Now, if you're thinking between these two, they actually have only two big differences that in the end matter. Those are the Moza Air can hold up to 2.5 kilos of a payload and has more clearance, meaning you can fit a larger camera there with a larger lens. The Zhiyun Crane has a maximum of 1.8 kilos and 20-hour battery life compared to the 4 hours in the Moza Air. The battery life in a lot of situations will matter more than the extra payload and space you get in the Moza Air. In fact, if you can fit something in the 1.8 kilos and you're doing travel or run and gun or documentary, the 20 hours in battery life is much more important than any of the little improvements Moza Air has gotten. That being said, if you cannot fit your camera in the Zhiyun Crane, you really have no option. And in the 2.5 kilogram payload range, the Moza Air really has no competition. It is the cheapest and probably most user-friendly gimbal that can fit a 2.5 kilogram camera. Now, I've been testing Moza Air for 1 week. I used it also in Sweden, in city of Stockholm, and I found quite a bit of problems compared to the Zhiyun Crane. Zhiyun Crane has been very reliable. We have to remember it's been almost 1.5 years on the market, so they pretty much figured out the firmware issues and the algorithm is pretty refined by now. However, the Moza Air still kind of feels like a beta from the software side. The worst being that it has the tendency to sometimes start a little bit of shaking, and even worse, this very slow shake where the horizon slowly shifts back and forth like this, which can ruin a shot, but at the same time it's so small and subtle that it's difficult to see from the back of the camera. I also had a lot of calibration issues. I had to calibrate 6 times before I got a good calibration where the horizon stayed still and the gimbal wouldn't move on its own. I've also seen a lot of other users getting similar problems. If I compare this to the Zhiyun Crane, this unit I think I've calibrated twice during half a year, and I've never had this type of problems. Reliability is much better on the Zhiyun Crane in my experience. If we go to a more heavier setup, maybe the things would be different. But if you're using an A6500 or A6300, you will probably get better results on the Zhiyun Crane. Even after all this, I will be keeping this unit because there are many things that I do like. First of all, the controller is really nice. It has a little screen that tells you the status of the gimbal in addition to start, stop, and in future updates, possibly focus or zoom controls with a roll in the back. The gimbal has 2 tripod mounting spots one up here which allows you to install a screen or something similar without having the dual handle. The larger clearance means that I had an easier time balancing the 18 to 35 f1.8 Sigma, and it might actually fit the 50 to 150 or possibly the Sony 70 to 200 G Master lens. Unfortunately, I do not have the possibility to try that. One of the really cool things is that it gives you more cinematic freedom. One of my favorite shots that you can do with a lighter lens, you can get full 360 barrel shots in almost every axis. For example, you can make your camera rotate 360 degrees like this, or you can get a up and down parallel shot like so. It supports inverted and what they call flashlight mode. However, with heavier lenses, because the balance point shifts a bit very easily, I would not recommend turning the gimbal around. The application feels a bit unfinished. It is missing some of the key features, including acceleration, smoothing, and the ability to change the follow and control speed. You can only change between presets, 3 presets that you set on a computer. The preset functionality is pretty nice, especially since if you're changing between lenses. But again, with the Moza Air, I have to bring my PC with me, just in case. Especially since sometimes it just forgets the settings, and I don't see the logic why. But you absolutely need the controller, because you cannot change some of the settings with anything else except the controller, not even on the computer. As a conclusion, the Moza Air is showing a lot of potential, but at the moment it has reliability issues. Zhiyun Crane is a bit smaller and a bit lighter, and much more reliable, has a much longer battery life. If you can fit your camera comfortably on the Zhiyun Crane, it is a better option at this moment. Goodson is showing very good potential. They are releasing a lot of updates. They have an advanced time-lapse function app in the development, but you never know how these actually turn out. Yeah, I hope this has been helpful. If you wanted me to show how to calibrate or stabilize some of these lenses or anything really, leave a comment, and hopefully see you in the next actually.